Welcome, Barry O'Farrell. Firstly, describe us the situation in India. We've seen the pictures. What's it like on the ground?
Well, it's different. As in Australia, India is a federation, and state by state, the COVID situations are difficult. Mumbai, happily, India's largest city, appears to have seen a turn downwards in the number of daily infections. Here in Delhi, which has been the epicentre of the hospital crisis and the oxygen shortages, we're still seeing numbers at high levels. But again, for the third day in a row, we've seen a positivity level under 30%. So there's signs of improvement, but across the country, numbers are still increasing. 350,000 new cases identified yesterday. That's almost the population of Canberra. That brings the total number of active cases to 3.5 million cases. 3,500 deaths have been recorded each night of this week.
It's horrific stuff, but I understand that you've had High Commission staff who've come down with COVID. How's their health?
Well, I have a number of locally engaged staff who work here at the High Commission, as well as some Australian-based officers who've come down with COVID. The Australian-based officers have all recovered. We've not had any serious issues with our locally engaged staff, although I have to say most of them have had family, friends or other loved ones who've died during this second wave.
So how many of your Australian staff, for example, who might be living in compounds, how many of them have been diagnosed with COVID?
Over the course of the past year, we've had 4 of our diplomats come down with COVID. I'm happy to say all have recovered.
Look, Qantas Boeing 787 will be landing in Delhi later today. I understand you've got 1,000 ventilators coming from Australia, oxygen concentrators. Where will these go?
Well, I'm delighted to be accepting this emergency medical assistance and providing it out at the airport to the India Red Cross, where under the direction of the Indian Ministry of Health, it will be distributed to hospitals across the region. This is the first of what is expected to be at least 2 flights, which will provide Australian aid. I understand the Australian government's talking to states and territories as well as the private sector about any additional supplies that would come out here. The aid coming from Australia has been welcomed by India and by people across this country. Earlier this year, we saw India provide free of charge 66 million doses of vaccine to over 70 countries. And Australia's relief effort today is part of a global effort to repay India for that contribution in battling COVID earlier in the year.
The plane won't be returning to Australia empty, as I understand it. How many of your staff and or family members will be evacuated from India?
None of our staff or family members have yet been evacuated from India. Look, there are Australians in India who clearly want to get back to Australia. Those Australians understand that currently there is a pause in direct flights and flights between India and Australia, and those Australians are clearly looking forward to a resumption of those flights in mid-May.
I understand that there is a pause, but the question was how many of your staff and or family members will be on that plane when it comes back to Australia. They are, of course, exempted.
Sorry, I thought you'd already said the fact the plane will be empty. So, no, there are none of my staff, none of my diplomats are travelling out of India at the present time. As I say, Australians in India, including those on my staff who may be due holiday or seeking to get some medical attention, non-COVID related, back in Australia, are looking forward to the resumption of normal flights, recognising that the repatriation flights, of which there were 8 scheduled to occur in May, are restricted to those vulnerable Australians who are registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
So just to be absolutely clear, the plane will return to Australia empty and it won't have any of your staff or family members?
For the third time, not any of my staff, not any of my staff's dependents will be on that plane as it leaves here. Every Australian in India understands that currently there are no flight options between India and Australia. Every Australian in India understands that that's a decision by the national government to try and strengthen Australia's quarantine system. And I suspect every Australian in India is also aware that they're looking forward. So I've got that wrong anyway. So they're looking forward to coming back when they can.
How many Australians have registered interest in coming back to Australia with the High Commission?
Well, we have 9,000 Australians in India registered with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Disturbingly, over the past week, the number classified as vulnerable has increased from 600 to 900. And as the Prime Minister said when he announced the flight pause, the priority in the returns to Australia on repatriation flights are those people who are vulnerable.
Okay, by vulnerable, what are we talking about here? People who have been sick, old?
Vulnerable covers a number of things, including their financial circumstances, their health situation, and other factors. That's determined in Canberra by skilled people at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and all the posts here in India, Chennai, Mumbai, Calcutta and Delhi, endeavouring to communicate with all Australians who are registered, but in particular with that vulnerable cohort.
How many Australians are actually in Indian hospitals at the moment with COVID? Do you know?
Sorry, I missed that. You're a bit light.
How many Australians are in Indian hospitals with COVID? Do you know?
We don't collect those figures, but we do ask those who are affected by COVID to let us know, to register with us, and to make sure that we know that they're getting the assistance that they deserve.
How many Australians are in that condition then? If they've asked to let you know.
Well, within the vulnerable cohort that's registered in Canberra, there would clearly be, as well as across the 9,000 people that are registered with us, people that have either suffered in the past from COVID or may be infected currently. But again, all of our posts are identifying and saying to those people who are registered with us that if they have difficulties, please contact us so that we can do what we can to assist. To this point, other than a prominent cricketer overnight, where I've had an approach from a third party just to check on his welfare, we haven't had too many of those people contact us.
So how has this travel ban gone down in India? We've heard overnight a Congress politician, Manish Tiwari, he called it inhumane, unethical. Any response yet from the government to you or the Commission?
Look, India is a diverse democracy, just as Australia is. India has a surfeit of politicians, just as Australia does, and comments are made from time to time. But the real answer to your question is that India understands that national governments will take decisions that reflect their priorities to keep their citizens safe. This is a country that, like Australia last year, closed its international borders, banned flights to protect its citizens, and importantly here in India, to boost the capacity of its health system. I think the Indian government understands that the Australian decision announced by the Prime Minister was to strengthen the integrity of the quarantine system that's been so crucial in keeping Australia safe during this COVID crisis.
Well, as a former Premier, political leader, what did you think of the news that Australians were being threatened with jail and hefty fines if they attempt to seek safety in Australia?
I left politics 7 years ago. I'm here as High Commissioner assisting Australians in India to get back home as quickly as possible. So we operate within the rules and structures set by whoever's in power. And at the present time, like those other 9,000 people registered in India, we look forward to the resumption of flights so that we can assist the 900 people who are vulnerable to get back home.
When do you believe the first of those repatriation flights will start?
Well, that's an issue for the government, but we knew that there were 8 scheduled repatriation flights planned for May. They were interrupted by the flight pause. We're expecting them to resume mid-May, and I'm hoping that that will make a significant dent in the number of vulnerable Australians who are registered with the department.
Look, lastly, we're obviously aware that IPL has been suspended. The cricket's not going to happen anymore in India. We've got a few dozen Australian players and officials. What's being done to get them home, if anything?
Well, as the Prime Minister said when asked about this a week or so ago, our priority Our efforts are largely directed towards the needs of those vulnerable Australians who are registered with the department. I've been contacted throughout the IPL tournament this year by a number of cricketers wanting information about different bits and pieces, including the status with the flight ban. The Players Association has contacted me. I understand that between them and Cricket Australia, options are being identified. But I say again, the government's made clear that our priority here in India, at all 4 of our posts, is to assist vulnerable Australians who are registered with us.
All right, so no special priority for the cricketers. Barry O'Farrell, thank you very much for your time and stay healthy.
Thank you, Andrew.